Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. We have an awesome show planned for you today. Royce White and Steve Kim will join me. We're going to talk about a couple of, or one really explosive topic that I think we have to address. We can no longer ignore the conflict going on between American blacks and Jews. Royce White and I are going to discuss that. So give me a moment with that. And then Steve Kim and I will talk a little bit about who our top 5 football teams are in the NFL. It's been a weird season. I'm not sure if there's a great team. Last night, the San Francisco 49ers lost to the Minnesota Vikings, really upending things. And then I'm going to end today's show with the fire starter at the end of today's show. And it will be about what we're doing at the Blaze. We're sending additional ground troops and forces to the information war. Stick around for my fire starter at the end of tonight's show. It's good. It's important. It's hopefully it's going to serve as inspiration for you to join us in this fight as we try to take on big tech. And speaking of big tech, I need to remind you all to help me fight the algorithms that are trying to slow the growth of this show. This is a continuous, everyday fight. And so, you're sitting there thinking, what are the small things we can do to push back against all the forces aligned against us, those of us with a biblical worldview, those of us with respect for traditional American values. And I don't know if it can get any easier than just helping me and us fight the algorithm on this show. So if you're watching over YouTube, I need you to leave a comment. I need you to hit notifications. Make sure you're getting a notification because YouTube will unsubscribe you or cancel your notifications. I need you to hit the likes. It's very important that you hit the likes. And it's important you get in the chat and you participate and you have a conversation about what we discuss on the show. Today's conversation is going to be very explosive. Last week, I asked you guys that listen over Apple to help me, help us raise our rating back to a 4.9. We did that, but it's vitally important that you continue to give me those 5-star ratings. And it's even more important that you take the 2 to 3 to 4 minutes just to write a review on Apple. We need 100 reviews today on Apple and that 5-star review to continue to fight the algorithms. Trust me, this little bit that I'm asking, it does make a difference. It does make an impact. Lastly, before I get to Royce and we start talking about a very controversial topic, that's why we call this show Fearless, because we're not afraid to talk about all the real issues and any issue that's on the table. We're not going to avoid it. We're going to talk about it here. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is because of great sponsors like the Association of Mature American Citizens, AMAC. This isn't AMAC that I'm talking about, but there is an organization out there that still backs Obamacare, gun control, and extreme transgender policies that endanger our children. And while they claim to be bipartisan, the truth is that last year, 95% of their donations went to Democrats and leftists. That organization is AARP, and it doesn't represent the values of American seniors. Fortunately, there's a conservative alternative. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, proudly champions Americans' rights to free speech, religious liberty, and the Second Amendment. AMAC is the leading conservative advocacy and benefits organization and defends parents' rights to protect their children. Joining gives you access to special low rates on cell phones and plans, health and wellness products, travel and lodging, vision, dental, and prescription drugs. So join today. Let's send AARP a strong message that they don't represent conservative seniors. Join AMAC today at amac.us/fearless. That's amac.us/fearless. I'm a lifetime member of AMAC. I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done. We need to support groups like AMAC if we want to push back and have a voice in America. Support AMAC. All right, Royce, welcome back to the show. I need you today because we got to talk about this. It appears to me from the outside that Black America, or blacks in the majority, seem to be supporting Palestinians and Palestine in this conflict with Israeli Jews. And there's layers and layers and layers to this. I don't know if you saw this, Royce, but Dave Chappelle, I believe last night, perhaps, or anyway, I want to read from the Wall Street Journal. Dave Chappelle performing in Boston. I'm going to read you from the Wall Street Journal. Dave Chappelle criticized Israel's bombing of Gaza at a performance in Boston in which the comedian accused the U.S. of aiding the slaughter of innocent civilians in the show at TD Garden last Thursday. People reacted in the crowd and told Dave to shut up. Dave responded back emotionally and started criticizing Israel. I mentioned Dave Chappelle because I think he's reflective of a mood and a feeling and a vibe, they say, or whatever, that many American blacks seem to be in support of Palestine and sympathizing with Palestine, putting them at odds with Israeli Jews and American Jews. It's across college campuses and in major cities. You're seeing young people, black, white, hyper-educated, whatever, tearing down signs that are showing these Israeli Jewish hostages. It just seems crystal clear that there is a disconnect between black people and Jews. And this has been bubbling, I think, for many years. And now we're at a point where it's all come to the surface and everybody's out of the closet and has taken their positions. I'm trying to understand it, and that's why I wanted to have the conversation with you. And so I'll just start with a simple question. Why are American blacks siding with Palestine?
Okay, first, let me say, and I think it's appropriate for people to start here every time this conversation comes up. My thoughts and prayers are with all the people affected by this conflict, by war there in the Middle East, but anywhere in the world. War is usually an endeavor of kings and kingmakers and political agendas of political elites or institutions. And it's very rare that a populace or that the people are really the perpetrators or benefactors of war. And so to start, I just say, I asked the question, cui bono, who benefits in this situation? There's a few answers. There's who benefits right now, right there in the Middle East. There's who benefits here in America. There's who benefits geopolitically all across the world. And all of them should be considered. All of them come into play. Right now, here in our own country, we know the military-industrial complex certainly benefits. They benefit, and even more so, the uniparty benefits. I know you want to maybe discuss Tom Emmer, and that's where that comes into play. But there on the world stage, there's a lot of people who could benefit. China could benefit, certainly, if Iran backs Hamas and Iran provokes a war with NATO or the West, and China could potentially hang them out to dry, which it looks like they may in fact do. And if China hangs Iran out to dry, who ends up getting Iran in the end? Who acquires those natural resources? We give Iran as a tributary state to China the same way we gave Afghanistan to China. And people would look at that and say, well, why would America engage in a conflict that may surrender such a natural resource-rich nation to one of their mortal national enemies? Well, there are people in our country, there are people in our government who are very pro-China. And now people may look at that whole, thing I laid out and go, what does this have to do with Palestine and Israel? Everything. It has everything to do with Palestine and Israel. And hope we'll get to that in a moment, because the Uniparty and Tom Emmer and Biden and the Chinese dark money and the Russians and the Iranians, it's all on the bar now. I've been saying it. For all of those who say, oh, this is conspiracy theory, it's too much, it's too deep. We're deep in the water now, aren't we? I mean, we're about as deep as you could possibly get now. I'll answer your first question first, and then we can work from there. The Marxists, the communists, the intellectual academic from the universities, academics from the universities, this entire leftist BLM movement, they're wave riders. They ride the wave. They ride, especially the intellectual juice behind the movement. Now, the people on the ground are more or less brainwashed, and they go whichever way the mainstream establishment winds blow them. And then they've been very effective with the narrative and co-opting people's genuine gripes with government and establishment and war for many, many years. You could go all the way back to the first anti-war movement in Vietnam. Were those hippies really, were those hippies in the 60s and 70s really protesting the war on a moral basis? Or did the entire left and Marxist anti-establishment liberal movement in the universities just take a moment in time and take a conflict and use it to their benefit? They've been doing that this entire time. And so Palestine, for many, represents what would seem like the party line on a white European colonial history. And so, you know, it's easy for them to line up with Palestine. They don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about the Jews. They don't care about people dying from war. They don't care about any of it. It's all theater, in my opinion.
And so it sounds like you're suggesting that everything has been color-coded, and, you know, all conflicts, all disagreements are based on some kind of color arrangement that we've all decided on.
Yeah.
And everybody, the Jewish people are white, the Palestinian people are people of color, and so that's who I'm siding with. They have to be oppressed because most of the Jews that we know and recognize appear to be white. It's a very surface level understanding of actually who Jews are and who even Israeli Jews are. It's a very surface level. And so you just say, we've taken the easy route that we've been led to, and it's really, but take someone like, and I hate to suggest this, but I do respect Dave Chappelle's intellect to some degree. Why would someone like him, and maybe it's just as simple as he's had a lot of beef with Jewish people, his lawyers, the people in Hollywood, and so he has perhaps some animus towards his own personal dealings with Jews in the entertainment industry, and that may explain why he's siding with the Palestinians.
Well, first off, I want to say I don't associate Dave Chappelle or Dave Chappelle's opinions with the traditional BLM's position on this conflict. And number one, I think Dave Chappelle is a great example to bring up because it shows the lack of coherence in their political stance or in their political narrative. In one sense, they want to be pro-Palestinians, but the Palestinians are, for the most part, Sunni Muslim, which reject all fundamental tenets of LGBTQism in their country. That aside, when it was Kanye West talking about this entire, black Jewish thing, or it was Kyrie Irving, the same BLM movement called Kanye West anti-Semitic because he supported Trump. So it becomes very clear that the BLMs of the world, the radical left's political position of the world, is predicated on national politics, national party politics. And so far as that ideology stretches to the far corners of the earth, they'll try and line up with any issue they can, any way they need to service their narrative and their storyline here at home. Dave Chappelle is not somebody who has been revered, supported, promoted, propped up by the BLM left mainstream media by any means. And now I will say that just because BLM has fallen on Palestine's side doesn't mean that that there isn't merit to the claims that are made about this conflict. Those are two separate things. And I want people to understand that your enemies not only will show up to your door, your front door, with a gun pointed at your head and announce themselves, they are also many masters of the universe, masters of politics and nations, they're also very brilliant in being able to identify a crisis and Trojan horse that crisis. And that's what BLM is trying to do right now with Palestine. The Palestinians ideologically and the BLM radical left in the West here aren't aligned on any basis other than America and the West and European colonial history is a net oppressor of black and brown people. And that's only half the story. Now, there is some truth to that, definitely. And it would be dishonest not to acknowledge the truth that lies in the narrative. And when the conservative movement cucks for the mainstream media by trying to take one side instead of acknowledging where there is merit in those claims, we empower the left to carry those claims to dumber, unbeknownst people that get their politics with French fries.
Royce, this has been going on now for a little more than 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I can't remember. I'm in the fog of just like the news cycle, and it seems like everything is apocalyptic or cataclysmic. I don't know. And so I'm a bit in a fog, but it's like what Hamas did was an atrocity.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know. I still haven't reached a firm conclusion on what the proper reaction is, what America's role in this conflict long-term should be. To me, what has happened, we've moved so far away from truth that it's impossible to spot who's righteous and who's not.
No doubt.
I just feel like I'm in a fog. And so I wonder if, because it does look like, from the outside, it looks like black people are supporting Palestine or public black people are, but I think most people, whether black or white, we're just confused. We don't know what to fully believe about virtually anything.
Well, first off, yes, you're right. Black people, for the most part, are very consciously asleep at the wheel when it comes to world politics. And the world politics as they stand today, let alone the history of the world politics. And we have an entire fake woke leftist academic, university-driven mainstream media that tries to inform black people or make them think that they have a firm grasp on history. And usually they just give them some cookie cutter cheat sheet to be able to align themselves when they go through the drive-through to get their politics. But black people at bottom do have a sound intuition about what's taking place here. They just don't know how to properly identify it. Let's just talk about it. I'm not shaky at all about what America's role is right now, what it was, what it should be. I'm not shaky in the least bit about it. It's very clear.
Well,
number one,
do tell.
Number one, we're American citizens. And we have a crisis in our own nation, a dire situation here in our own nation. And anybody we would seek to protect on the world stage from any injustice, attack, radicalism, terrorism, whatever you want to call it, we're going to have a tough time doing so if our nation is as weak as it is. And so that's first and foremost. We have a crisis here that we need to fix. And we need to fix it like yesterday. And there's no signs or evidence that we're moving towards fixing it. We're actually doing more of what we've already done to get ourselves in the spot we're in, which is connected to Israel and Palestine and the Middle East. And what we've done is we've allowed ourselves to be co-opted and used by British intellectuals. This isn't our deal. The deal with Israel isn't our deal. That was Britain's foreign policy. That was the European intellectual elites, omnisexual wine societies' foreign policy. This is the United Nations deal. We adopted it because we were the biggest stick on the playground. We had the biggest gun and biggest military after World War II, and it became our default duty to protect all the nations that would face danger, per the narrative, that would face danger around the world, when really it's wherever our money is. Wherever our money is, wherever our economic interest is, that's where our military is. That's where our military comes and does its business. And so, you go back to the initial agreement, the initial two-state agreement between Palestine and Israel. You can see that the Palestinians have been restricted into smaller and smaller space. Now, my claim, and again, people who want to say that Israel is legitimate on a biblical basis, this is a popular conservative opinion that God gave this land to the Jews or Israel. Number one, the Zionists and the people who founded the state of Israel were not believers in God. They were explicitly atheist and anti-God. You can go read it right in their what we call today white papers about Zionism. Zionism was an offshoot of Marxism, or you could say Marxism was an offshoot of Zionism, depending on how you want to look at the history. But the Theodor Hegel and Marx and all these people were a part of the same intellectual tradition coming out of Europe. Okay, so the initial inception of Israel is not legitimate on a biblical basis because these people who fought for it, who were a part of its inception, they didn't believe in God. And you can make a strong argument that many of the people who today advocate for Israel's legitimacy don't believe in God. My opinion is that Israel is legitimate on the basis that they fought a war on 3 fronts for their land, and they won that war. They fought a war against 3 Arab nations, and they won that war. The land is theirs. Since time immemorial, if 2 men come to a carcass, if 2 wolves come to a carcass, and both of them want it, and you know they have a fight to the death or till one submits, the person who wins that battle gets that carcass. And land is no different. So Israel's legitimate on that basis. The question today is, and the rightful question is, what does America have to do with it? What is America's role in it? What do we have to do with it? I don't think we have anything to do with it, to be quite honest, other than we seem to have this strange belief about our responsibility to police the entire world. And they fence it as humanitarianism, or they fence it as us being good keepers of the global society. It's all a scam. QE bono, who benefits? If we're going to police the world, the military-industrial complex benefits. And that's exactly what you're seeing shake out right now in Washington, D.C. This is what Matt Gaetz warned about. Just 2 weeks ago, this is exactly what he warned us about. Without saying.
So I want to reduce the conversation down and make it less big and less global and just talk about what appears to me to be a growing conflict between American blacks and American Jews. So I'm going to leave Israel and Palestine out of it and just say there's conflict from Kanye West to Dave Chappelle to Kyrie Irving to now when American blacks look out and say, oh, there's a conflict in Israel. I think all of these things and take me, I'm not in the Hollywood world anymore, and I'm not a part of that form of the entertainment industry. But one of the complaints that I think a lot of blacks have is like, hey man, Jewish people exercise a lot of control over the entertainment industry. And I think a lot of black people, including entertainers, but even those of us that consume entertainment are like, we don't like our role in the entertainment industry. It's like whoever the puppet masters are in the entertainment industry that decided that our role is buffoonish, debaucherous, immoral, perverted, clownish, criminal, that's our role in the entertainment industry, in music, in movies, in television, and it's matriarchal. And I think perhaps there's an argument to say inappropriate that we blame Jewish people, because I think Jewish people would say, why are y'all accepting that role? You have autonomy. Tyler Perry can make different movies. You don't have to, just because they cut you the check to put on the big gold chains and gold teeth and dance around and pretend to be a criminal, you don't have to accept that. And so anyway, I think that is a lot of people's conflict as it relates to Jewish people, is they feel like they've defined a culture for us that is poison.
Absolutely. No, we defined the culture. We defined our culture for ourselves. And every man, and that's That's the beauty about being an American citizen. That's the real fundamental ideal that our founding fathers left us once we got past slavery and then segregation and racial division. And, that's the real gem of American ideology, is that every American citizen has free will and God-given rights. You're the master of your own destiny in much regard, in much respect. However, there's a flip side to this coin. And I said yesterday on my podcast, in basketball, we said, there's all these philosophical arguments about, offense or defense. Where does offense begin and defense end? Where does defense begin and offense end? And you'll hear some people say the best defense is a good offense. And you'll hear some people say the best offense is a sound defense, and vice versa. And I bring that up in this case because we have a crisis right now in our American philosophy. One, because we let Marxists jack our institutions. So most of the intellectualism is run by people who are in on the scam. But furthermore, we have a real fundamental crisis trying to balance what America was in its inception as a business, as a corporation, and what our philosophical and some would say spiritual principles and beliefs are. And they use Christians right now, even in this narrative. They're using Christian. This is a crisis of Christianity. Because the conservative right, the Protestant right, which is the majority of the Christians in this country, and the lukewarm, milquetoast Catholic hierarchy there in Rome, in many respects, corrupt as all get out, they have they have promoted this idea, you could say, that somewhere in here there was an acceptance of this radical materialism and consumerism of capitalism, and it became crony capitalism. And so you hear a lot of conservatives and Republicans who wrap themselves in the religious right or in Christianity and faith, taking the Lord's name in vain, not swearing on a podcast, but really taking the Lord's name in vain, wrapping yourself in the Bible, wrapping yourself in the faith for illegitimate purposes. That's taking the Lord's name in vain. That's letting filth come out of your mouth, for all those out there who have a problem with my profanity. Those people on the right, conservatives, Republicans, whoever you want to say, they make an acceptance for greed and all these heresies of biblical faith when it comes to our economic system, the fundamental underpinnings of our economic system. They make an excuse for it. They make an acceptance. They make an exception for it, and that's a grave issue. So, my point is that yes, Black people, we are in control of our own destiny at bottom. But let's talk about the reality of government and institutions as well, because the two are not exclusive, right? I mean, we live in a world, we live in a society. There's an ecosystem. There's the way the climate works, and climate change is a scam. But I'm just saying there are systems in our world. There are systems in existence that impact one another. So if you're a group of people and you monopolize the essential resources, whether that be of a particular industry or of the planet and of mankind writ large, once you have a firm grasp on that monopoly, you have the power to incentivize people away from their moral, ethical, and some would say biblical faith and principles. You have that power. That's why Jesus went into the temple and turned the tables over on the money changers. All throughout the Bible, you barely saw Jesus get out of character. He got out of character with the leaders of the temple because the leaders of the temple had the power, the institutional power, to mislead people away from righteousness and mercy and grace and God's love, right? So there is a higher degree of severity placed upon institutions, which is why leadership is so important and the crisis of leadership is so profound and the result that we see is so obvious. Yes, Black people have let themselves be used, but that doesn't excuse the predators that exploit it either. The Leo Cohens of the world and the Larry Finks of the world. And it's not just Jews. I don't have to just say Jews, because there's Black bourgeoisie sellouts that did it to ourselves as well. And they're more a part of that elite omnisexual class than the Black man who lives, and works a 9 to 5 and then Ubers in his downtime to make ends meet. Those two people are completely different. And the scam that they're linked by skin color is one that still vexes me at night. You're nothing like Tyler Perry. I don't care how many Black movies Tyler Perry makes. You are nothing like Tyler Perry off of the simple fact that your skin color is the same. This guy is a wine society, upper elite, all access, bourgeois sellout.
I certainly agree with that, and I certainly think when I think about the complaints about, hey, well, they run the entertainment industry and blah, 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 and sometimes I fall into that trap, but at the end of the day, I evaluate myself and my own actions. It's like, well, hold on, they laid that same trap for me, and I said, no, I'm good. I'm just not going to do anything and say anything. I'm not going to accept the role that you want to carve out for me. And if that means me not getting the biggest piece of the chicken or a bigger slice of the pie as people that do, I'm going to live with that. Because again, I'm just, and that's not me trying to put myself on any pedestal, but I do want to take responsibility for myself and what I allow myself to get caught up in. And too often, because again, I look at the Oprah Winfreys of the world, I look at even a Tyler Perry, LeBron, Michael Jordan. We have enough resources and people with resources to do our own and be self-sufficient and not dependent on some other group. Yeah.
$1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year consumer base.
That's where I would say some of our animus towards the Jews that run the entertainment industry is just misplaced and misguided. You don't have to go that route. You don't have to do that. But too many of us want it the easy way. But where now I'm gonna speak out of both sides of my mouth. But I look at the people that get rewarded and get the checks cut and get put on platforms. And I look at someone, I'm going to say someone dangerous here, but it's just what I think. I look at someone like Birdman. What else is he going to do? He's a depraved criminal idiot. He's got no other, he's not going to Wall Street. He's not going to start his own legitimate business or what. He's not going to take the tattoos off his face. He's not any of that stuff. And I look across the board at a lot of these guys that they put on and make the leaders or whatever. And I'm like, they take people that have no options, install them in prominent positions, and then tell the educated blacks, you got to be more like them if you want to get ahead. And I see too many people falling for that okie doke and falling for that trap. And this is where I'll give Dave Chappelle credit. He could be making a lot more money if he would crack the jokes that they wanted him to crack. He'd probably be the host of the biggest nighttime talk show in the history of America if he'd just get on script and always say what they want him to say.
He'd be Kevin Hart.
Better than Kevin Hart because he's smarter than Kevin Hart. Yeah. But you know, I'm saying he'd be, you know, what Arsenio Hall or even bigger than what Arsenio Hall was, but he won't say what is demanded to be said, and so he's taking less money. He's making a lot of money, but you know, he ran away from the Comedy Central $50 million contract because, you know, he didn't want to put a dress on and he didn't want to be beholden to him. So hats off to Dave Chappelle. I think maybe I've gotten us in enough trouble, got myself in enough trouble. But I just feel like this is an issue that has to be discussed.
But you know, let's just be on. Well, let me get into trouble then, and you know, I'll take it back to what we're dealing with now because we're on our way to a world war. So whether people are going to get in trouble or whether, look, you can go hide wherever. And I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about the millions of American citizens who are affected by this. You can go high. Look, the high is good. I get it. The Netflix is good. The Dave Chappelle is good. The NBA basketball is good. Oh, let's all go watch the Phenom Wemby or whatever you're watching. I don't know. Maybe you're watching videos of guys doing parkour on 100-foot story skyscrapers. I don't know what people are doing these days, to be quite honest with you. I'm reading the best and the brightest. I'm going back and trying to find the best intellectual material I can to actually represent the interests of the American people, whether they're ready to represent their own interests or not. So you can do whatever you want to do, but we're going towards World War III right now. Like right now, today, by the end of the day, we may be full blown in it. And so, you know, all of your prejudgments, not you, anybody out there, all of your prejudgments, all of your opinions, all of the formerly held positions of your little political enclave, whether that be on the left or the right, all of it's going to be challenged now. And you know, just to go back to the Israel thing, like I said, I don't know how we get in trouble. Obviously, anti-Semitism is the caution line, and I already said Israel's legitimate on a political basis because they want a war for it. If I got to say more than that, it kind of tells you what the bias is around the issue, and it's what Dave Chappelle said. Why are there people that we can't discuss? Why can I say the N-word with impunity, but I can't say the F-word about homosexuals? These questions are becoming so blatantly contradictory and incoherent that it's actually creating the animus. So that's what I wanted to say. The contradiction, what Israel represents right now on the world stage in this conflict, is a basic contradiction of first principles and logic that has become so visible that even your low level, I can't read past a fifth grade novel, I can't read past the fifth grade, is starting to see how ridiculous it is. Over the past 60 years, maybe not so much. They didn't see it. But now that social media has given everybody a window into the conflict and the narrative, people are starting to get wise to it, and they're starting to ask questions, and they're starting to feel cheated, right? And like I said, look, what Hamas did, who would condone that? I mean, it's ridiculous. Nobody does condone that. I don't think if you condone that, you're probably, already a cast out from society wherever you are. But the question now is for American citizens in response, we're gonna level Gaza. We're gonna turn it into a parking lot, and our hostages are still there, or you're gonna tell me that the intelligence failed in one of the most protected places in the whole world. The intelligence failed, and now you have the counterintelligence to be able to go precisely identify and locate these Hamas terrorists. I mean, you could run that stuff on somebody who watches David Letterman back in the day. I'm a 90s baby, so David Letterman was on. You could tell that to somebody who watches Trevor Noah or somebody who watches Sean Hannity, for example. You can't tell that to nobody who watches Steve Bannon. You can't tell that to nobody who's been watching Alex Jones for 25 years. You mean to tell me the intelligence in the most protected nation in the world was dark, and all of a sudden, when we go back to Counter-Strike, we have high-level intelligence to precisely locate the specific people we want to? No, you're going to go cleanse Palestine and Gaza because you think it's your right. And many people are making the case that it's their right. And all I have to say to it is, don't do it in our name. Don't put the Americans into it. You could take China allegiant Joe Biden and his administration. You could take the rhinos and you can do it on their name. But us America firsters, us Trumpers, us no more never war citizens, we don't look on the record. You're not doing it in our name, not doing it in my name. You're not going to use blacks and Jews to create a formal one-party rule there in the House of Representatives and the Congress. That's what Hakeem Jeffries is doing right now. Let's put up the Negro, the black, and give him power and let him tell the narrative that we have to suppress the rights of minorities. Imagine putting a black man up in the United States Congress as the first black man to be speaker and have him promote on MSNBC that they should change the rules of the Congress to suppress the rights of the minority. Imagine that.
Hakeem Jeffries he's not the speaker. Tom Emmer.
But they're putting him up as, but my point is, the referendum right now is, by the rhinos, either you give us Emmer, or we'll make you deal with Jeffries. That's the ultimatum right now. They're behind closed doors in D.C. Either you give us uniparty Emmer, or you have to deal with Jeffries. And my point is, whether Jeffries gets the speakership or not is not the point. The point is that Jeffries was sponsored as speaker, and his first mention was, let's change the rules so that these extremists can't hold up business as usual. And what is that business? It's the same business it's been since 1950. We got to get a big military so we can always protect the Jews from radical Muslims. And these conservatives all across the country chew it up like bubble gum. I'm scared of Muslims. I'm scared of Muslims. The radical Islam is coming. Why are you scared of Muslims when your founding fathers gave you the Second Amendment? There's not a fiber in my body that's afraid of Muslims. Why? I carry a 9mm with hollow rounds. Show me a Muslim man that could take 7 hollow rounds to the chest and survive. I'll show you somebody who's not human. I'll show you a robot clone wearing Muslim skin because there's nobody who can do it. Show me a Muslim man that could take 2 hollows to the head. They can't do it. So the same people who promote the Second Amendment, small little enclave, come together to say, Islam is so terrifying. It has such a dangerous ability to reach us here in America that we need to spend money we don't have to go protect a nation we can't even protect in the end. If the entire Arab and Muslim world rises up, can we really save Israel? If what we've put into Israel thus far, if what Israel has today couldn't sufficiently protect them from basically a riverside street gang there in Gaza, if they don't have enough intelligence to stop that from happening, what happens when Syria and Iran and Jordan and Egypt and all of them rise up at the same time? What are we going to do then? Are we going to bomb and kill the entire Arab and Muslim world in defense of this nation? I mean, what's the plan? Remember they said, what's the plan? You tell us the plan now. Tell the American people, how do we win a war against 1 billion Muslims or 500 million Muslims there in the Middle East? Tell us. Be frank. Come clean. Emmer, Hakeem Jeffries, and it's on both sides of the aisle. Sean Hannity, come clean. Tell us how we're going to win this war. They don't have a plan. Their plan is the same plan it's always been. Take our money, fight a war, let the military-industrial complex get their rocks off, get their piece of the pie. Then they take that same money into the Arab nations and find the sellouts and pay them to keep the peace. And then they tell us that there's a Muslim alliance. There is no Muslim alliance. It's a fallacy. These Muslim and Arab nations have had sellouts at the top of those regimes since the whole deal was done. You know how I know? They killed Saddam Hussein. Unlawful, unconstitutional by the United Nations Charter. They killed Gaddafi, unconstitutional by the United Nations Charter. I'm not saying they were good people, but they had no right to kill those two, especially when we funded them and put them in place. Completely immoral. Did the Arab world rise up then? Did the Arab nation states rise up then? No, they didn't. They were taking handsome, sweet payouts. They sat back, they watched, they let the crisis fester, bubble up, and then they put their pitch in. Hey, you know what? We'll take this in exchange for not showing allegiance to our Muslim identity group. Riyadh, the crown jewel of Europe, the crown jewel of the fourth industrial revolution is going to be Riyadh. You think it's going to be Riyadh because what they have some affection for Mecca and Medina? You think it's going to be Riyadh because they want to include Muslims? No, it's going to be Riyadh because they're cutting a deal with the Saudis for the oil, and they're going to tell self-loathing, self-hating white folks in the West that they need to reduce their freedom of movement because we don't have the same energy resources we once did on the planet. Meanwhile, Europe and the rest of I mean, come on, it's just a scam. And you could say that it ain't that deep or I'm going off into a tangent. Check the receipts. Everything I'm saying, you could slow down and go check it. Is the crown jewel in Riyadh? Is the first line city going to be in Riyadh? Whose idea was it? Mohammed bin Salman's? No, he was educated at Oxford. The crown, the intellectual tradition. You see what I'm saying? Is it clicking yet? The whole thing is a scam. Cui bono, who benefits?
Royce, thank you. You've given us a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. I appreciate it. We'll see you later this week. That's Royce White. I wanted to talk about blacks and Jews, and we did. And Royce said a mouthful. He's given us a lot to think about. Steve Kim's going to join us around the corner. I want to make sure that you guys know you're invited on November 2nd for our Fearless Cookout Gold Jacket Addiction. We have 4 NFL Hall of Famers: Brett Favre, Warren Sapp, Marshall Faulk, Brian Urlacher. They'll be here with us live in studio on November 2nd for our special cookout show. You can attend as well. Go to fearlessarmytickets.com. That's fearlessarmytickets.com. If If you'd like to buy a ticket, be here for the taping, hang out with some Hall of Famers and me, fearlessarmytickets.com. Don't forget to hit the likes. If you're listening over Apple, give us that 5-star review, write a review. Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Next.
These words are our religion, all regrets and our decisions. We all want to go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Warren Sapp, previously on Fearless.
There's a rumor that he thinks he can leverage an NFL team into giving him an ownership stake in the team. He's floating that out there, that he wants an ownership stake in a team to whoever drafts him.
Wait.
Think this will happen? Yeah.
Wait. This wasn't this the same fella just last week that says if a right team is not in the number one position, he'll go back to college because he'll be taking a pay cut to go to that team, right?
Yes.
Didn't I hear that correctly, or not? Because I don't have a producer and a whole team. Something like that, right? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So now, I know one NFL player who now owns a piece of an NFL team, and his name is Warrick Dunn. Does Caleb Williams have a story like Warrick Dunn, and does what Warrick Dunn did for his whole time in the National Football League, giving single moms a new home? Caleb, that's what you have to have.
He does.
You have to have a very
paint his fingernails.
Story. I know, and put in Utah on it and got his ass whooped by Utah and all this stuff. Yeah, I got it. I got it. This is Hollywood, where they make up a lot of wild stories. Son, get in the reality world. Warrick Dunn owns 1% of the Atlanta Falcons because Arthur Blank just gifted it to him. Because if you know Warrick like I do, Warrick is the salt of the earth, and no better representation of an organization than a good man and a great ambassador for a franchise. That's who owns a piece of a team.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps. I see that you are 배불러 So fly.
All right, welcome back. Make sure you keep hitting the likes. Make sure if you're listening over Apple, you're giving us that 5-star review. Help us fight the algorithms. You need to be writing a review. It's a small thing you can do to help us fight the algorithm and make this show more popular. All right, time for some Korean Cosell. Steve Kim, welcome back to the show. Big Monday Night Football game last night. San Francisco 49ers get upset by the Minnesota Vikings, really throwing everything up into upheaval, because I went into last night's game thinking the 49ers were the best team in football. I'm now not so sure. I'm not overreacting to that, but, because some few things could have went differently and they could have won that game. But Steve, I wanted us to both talk about who our top 5 teams are in the NFL right now. I don't think there's any great team. There's no team I would bet my life savings on. It's like definitely going to be in the Super Bowl or definitely going to win the Super Bowl. I think there's some good teams in the NFL, no great team. Here's my top 5, and I want to compare it to yours. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs as the best team in football. They're 6-1. I still, despite the loss last night, I've only dropped San Francisco 1 spot to number 2. I think they're better than the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 6-1 like the Kansas City Chiefs. I've moved Baltimore back into my top 5 at number 4 after they manhandled the Detroit Lions. And I have the high-scoring, high-flying Miami Dolphins at number 5. What say you, Korean Cosell, to my top 5?
We pretty much have the same teams, except their number 5's a little bit different, and I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for it. The Niners are interesting. It's clear to me that offense needs Deebo Samuels. I know everyone's going to talk about Brock Purdy, and look, the early fumble by McCaffrey did not help things. But what was really disappointing to me, and again, this is where the quarterback gets so much heat, and he did throw a couple of interceptions late in that game. But Jason, I expected better from the Niners defense. They got carved up without the Vikings' best receiver, Jefferson, and they had no answer for Jordan Addison. And it was one of those moments where you kind of appreciate Kirk's third cousins. He's not great. He's not elite. I get it. He struggles generally in prime time. No real playoff success. But he's a skilled quarterback. I mean, he's either the best of the mediocre or he's the mediocre of the very best. But generally, look at his track record. He puts up good numbers. His teams win. And then everyone gets to go golfing in January or Cancun. All right. But still, he gets you to a certain place. But last night, he was decisive in that pocket. And I kept waiting for Bosa and the rest of that pass rush to finally get home and turn the game around. And it never happened, Jason.
That is the missing element, is that Nick Bosa did not have a huge impact on that game, either with QB hurries or QB hits. That's what surprised me. But at the end of the day, they gave up 22 points. It's not like they gave up 30-some-odd points to the Vikings. They did enough on defense to win. They didn't do nearly enough on offense. But I'm not convinced that the 49ers took a real step back. Your 17-game schedule, the way the NFL is, teams are going to be a bit more inconsistent. And so I'm just not really down on the 49ers. But I see, Steve, you have the Philadelphia Eagles as the best team in football. There is a team that I think is called the defending world champions, who I believe, if memory serves me, didn't they beat Philadelphia the last time they played each other? I just don't see how the defending world champions have the same record as the Philadelphia Eagles. The last time they played, the defending champions beat the Eagles. Make it make sense. Why are the Eagles better than the Chiefs?
Oh, what is this, like boxing where you carry your title into the next fight? No. As soon as that last penalty that always seems to go the way of the Chiefs is thrown, and then they kick the field goal and they win the game, it's over. It's over. And then yeah, I said
you
that.
just referenced penalties.
Yes, I did.
You just referenced penalties. When the Philadelphia Eagles, did you see them against the Dolphins, where the referees were in the tank for the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles had 0 penalties and the Dolphins had 10? I thought Philadelphia this weekend benefited from some very friendly officiating, and I just don't see how I haven't, Jalen Hurts looked good this past week, but hasn't looked great all season. One guy, there's the defending world champions that I think have the reigning MVP. He's the leading candidate for MVP this season. Again, just make it make sense. Andy Reid, one of the premier coaches in the league. I get the Sirianni guy is a promising young guy, but man, I'm just having a hard time figuring out how Philadelphia is better than the Chiefs.
That Nick Sirianni, that is disciplined football that he preaches, and it's just played out in error-free football. I got to tell you, Vince Lombardi would be proud. He'd be looking down and just like giving a nod, And while Lombardi had the power sweep, they have the brotherly shove. So they literally get to play every series. And someone pointed this out. I think it was Zach Smith and Chris Drew. They begin every series 1st and 9. Think about what's in their back pocket. All they have to do is hey, guys, first 3 downs, we get 9 yards. Don't worry about it. We're moving those chains. They're a strong physical unit. Look, no team is ever the same from one to another. There's way too much player movement. But I look at the Eagles. I think they're better on the outside. I think they're as physical as anybody. And they have a upper management that is not afraid to make moves. Now, look, I don't know what Julio Jones and Kevin Byard, you can argue that they're a little bit past their prime, but they're there to play specific roles. And you look at the Eagles' pass defense the last 3-4 weeks, it is greatly improved. They had some issues on the back end. But again, Jason, we are talking about who we think is the best in week 8. That's like caring about who was leading the Boston Marathon in the 13th mile. Okay, because at the end, it's always going to be some Kenyan with no shoes. They're just going to bounce away and just run, win by a couple miles. But right now, we're talking about mile 14. We haven't even hit Heartbreak Hill yet on the NFL season.
Okay. I'm gonna call you RG Kim.
Oh God!
You got Baltimore as the third best team. You're buying all of the Lamar Jackson hype. Is that right? You got Baltimore is now better than San Francisco.
Again, we're just going week to week where we stand right now, and Lamar Jackson is getting that ball out early. I said a couple weeks ago, let's give this Monken thing a couple of weeks to develop. Jason, I'm kind of impressed. I really like what Lamar Jackson is doing, getting the ball out. Look, there's going to be some hero ball because Lamar's going to be Lamar. But for the most part, that offense is running pretty efficiently. They play very hard and tough defensively, which is their tradition. So, again, I have a question. So, in a big game, if it came down to the Niners and the Ravens, which quarterback do you like, Lamar or Brock Purdy? Which one?
Tough question, but I would have to say Lamar Jackson. Lamar's got an MVP. Lamar, if the passing breaks down, Lamar can make things happen with his legs. And so I'd have to say Lamar Jackson. However, you just transitioned us, in a nice segue, into what do we make of Brock Purdy based off last night? Those 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter were not good. And it wasn't some Hail Mary that got picked off. I mean, those were 2 legitimate interceptions. I thought for 3 quarters, to be honest with you, despite them not being able to get points, I thought he played really well and looked efficient and sharp. And then in the fourth quarter, he threw 2 really bad balls that ended up costing him any chance at winning. What's your reaction to where you at on Brock Purdy right now?
I think he's solid. Look, let's go through those 2 interceptions. The first one, I would like to ask Coach JB, because that wide receiver seemed awfully slow getting out of his cut. And it may have been an overthrow. So we need a more educated eye to tell us, was that a bad throw or a bad route or just bad timing? Okay. The second one, I'm going to defend them a little bit. Jason, they had no timeouts. Okay. And you had less than a minute to go. And I remember after the first couple of plays, the worst play you can make in football is any short throw in that situation with no timeouts. He had to hit a shot deep. Was it a Hail Mary? No, but was it kind of a desperation, high-risk throw that you needed to take to get inside the 20? Yes. And because a lot of that is because the defense could not get off the field sooner. I mean, complementary football, offense helps defense, defense helps offense. But I still think Purdy, with all the weapons, is a solid, serviceable guy that can play point guard.
Steve, they're comparing this guy to some degree to Tom Brady. And when you're getting compared to Tom Brady, and in this NFL where it's a 2-hand touch league, you can't touch the quarterback, they're paying you to move the ball in the final seconds without any timeouts. We've seen Tom Brady do it a million times. We saw Peyton Manning and Dan Marino. And, again, I'm not comparing Purdy to all these all-time greats, but, that was the trajectory. I think before 2 weeks ago, or maybe even going into this week, Brock Purdy was the leading candidate for MVP, and he's taken a step back. I still like him as well, but I'm now a bit concerned. Crunch time, fourth quarter, not sharp last night.
No, he wasn't. But again, this is a marathon, and it's not a sprint. And people are going to say, well, Brock Purdy's now lost 2 games in a row. But again, if they had a kicker that could make a relatively
should have won last week,
winnable or a kick that was not exactly 65 yards, we'd be saying, man, Brock Purdy, man, he's still just a one-loss quarterback, and he did the job at Cleveland against this really good defense. So again, we have to look at the whole scope of things. I think Brock has some really good intangibles, but in terms of overall arm strength, there are some limitations physically. And that is where Shanahan has to scheme this up. But again, we're also looking at a fact that I think Deebo Samuel is just a central component. For all the credit that McCaffrey gets, I'm just telling you, Deebo does so much for that offense, both in the run game and outside.
Well, one team was missing Justin Jefferson, and the other team was missing Deebo Samuels. Most people think Justin Jefferson better than Deebo, but Steve, great job. Thank you as always. We'll see you tomorrow. That's Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Don't go anywhere. I've got a fire starter that you'll want to hear next.
Warren Sapp, previously on Fearless.
Do you have a theory on why offenses seem to be struggling?
They don't want to work. They don't want to practice. It's that simple. I mean, you go to an NFL training camp and you almost like the old Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef? Ain't nothing going on around here. I mean, where's the beef? Where's the work being done? Where's the one-on-one? Where's the, after practice, jugs machines, the different things that, we put in during a week of work to go out and showcase our talent. It's just not being done right now in the National Football League.
The highest and most impactful form of communication is the written word. I believed that for most of my life. God's decision to release the Bible in written form rather than video or audio justifies my assertion. He breathed mankind into existence, and when we completely lost our way, he chose to guide, inform, and encourage us with words on a page. Doubting the power of written text is to doubt the creator of our inalienable rights. Thomas Jefferson, this nation's most profound founding father, recognized the power and importance of writing and reading. Jefferson said in 1787, the basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, the very first object should be to keep that right. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. But I should mean that every man should receive those papers and be capable of reading them. That's Thomas Jefferson. The enemies of American freedom and founding principles have used big tech to de-emphasize the written word, amplify the power of video, and manipulate language to distort foundational truth and dumb down our citizenry. The pervasive chaos, perversion, and corruption you see overrunning America are directly tied to the assault on the written word and newspapers. The information war is a dispute over language and access to truth. Through its relationship with big tech, the secular left controls the distribution and reach of accurate information. I'm telling you what you already know. You've seen Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and the newspapers that rely on these platforms disappear the Hunter Biden laptop story. We all suffered the consequences after the same cabal magnified the drug-induced death of George Floyd to trigger massive, sustained, violent unrest across the country. The same group has defined half of this country's citizens as potential domestic terrorists and plotters of an insurrection. At some point, we have to do more than complain. We have to take bold steps to end our dependence on platforms that openly despise our worldview and values. Today, The Blaze has taken a bold step. We're relaunching our website, theblaze.com, and freeing it from internet advertising. This is far more important than it sounds. When publishers like The Blaze host ads on their website, Google and other major ad exchanges use bots to scan stories for content they deem unsafe for advertisers. When an article is deemed unsafe, Google then demands that the advertisements be removed and threaten to demonetize the entire website. If we refuse to back down, Google then uses its algorithms to bury the story. So just imagine Steve Deace writing a piece at the height of the COVID pandemic explaining the stupidity of masks and experimental medical trials labeled as vaccines. That story has no chance of reaching a wide audience. Google and Facebook won't allow it. Here's another hypothetical. Imagine me writing a column explaining from a biblical point of view why transgenderism is an affront to God. That story would be considered unsafe for advertisers. Google and Facebook would do everything in their algorithmic power to prevent people from reading it. Big tech is pressuring publishers and content creators to adopt a secular worldview for financial and/or relevance success. I started writing opinion pieces in 1992 when I took a job at the Ann Arbor News. On every platform, whether it be the Ann Arbor News, the Kansas City Star, ESPN.com, FoxSports.com, AOLSports.com, J.School, and Outkick, my columns never had a problem reaching a wide audience. I've written my most consistently profound and impactful pieces in the last 3 years writing for The Blaze. At the same time, big tech has turned up the algorithmic headwind against my work. When you Google my name, it's easier to find pieces I wrote about Kobe Bryant 20 years ago than anything I wrote last week. What I say about Black Lives Matter, Deion Sanders, Megan Rapinoe, the murder of Tyree Nichols, Stephen A. Smith, Josh Allen, and Colin Kaepernick will go viral. What I write about the exact same subjects has a much harder time reaching the masses. Big tech and the left control the written word. They realize its importance. Do we? The Blaze is going to take a significant financial hit disconnecting from the major ad agencies. We're also adding additional staff to fortify the site and create more original content. It's a high-risk move. It's a move I support. I would rather write in support of God's truth for less money and to a small remnant than write compromised lies to a wider audience for more money. I don't want to be popular. I want to be saved. And I want to save the freedoms our ancestors fought, died, and sacrificed for against forces just as wicked as the enemy we face today. We need you in this fight with us. You're going to love the new blaze.com. It looks far better. It's much easier to read and navigate without all the distracting advertisements. We need your direct support to pull this off successfully. If you haven't already signed up for a general Blaze subscription and Blaze News, do so immediately. Support the written word. Support the form of communication that saves souls and can save our republic. That's it for today's show. We'll play tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.